Hey everyone, this is Chef Stephanie here at Turner Farm. Today we're working with Swiss chard. So I'm going to show you how to remove the leaf from the stem. It's all edible, but we're going to do both a Swiss chard salad with some roasted beets as well as some sauteed Swiss chard, just to show you two different ways that you can make Swiss chard, but honestly there's so much more you can do with it. So first I'm going to show you how to remove the leaves from the stem, and usually what I do, because usually in kitchens we're doing a lot more than just this small pile. We've got, gallons of it hanging around. So what I usually do is use right between my forefinger and thumb, and I pull up and pull it off. And really you just want to get the primary part of the stem off, just because it tends to cook a little bit longer than the leaves, just because it's more fibrous. So that's essentially what I'm going to do for all of these. Sometimes it's a little tricky at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fast. You can do the same thing for beet greens and kale. So it's really useful to pick up that technique. Now that we've got the stems and the leaves removed from each other, I'm going to show you how I normally cut the stems and then what I do for the leaves. So for the stems, I try to make them really thin so that if I'm cooking it, it cooks relatively quickly, but it's still going to cook a little bit longer than the leaves, so I always start my stems before I cook my greens. So what I'm going to do is just cut on a bias or on an angle. And if you've seen my knife videos, then you already know how to hold a knife, which is great. Maybe practice a little bit more before you start staring up at cameras while doing this. But all I'm doing is running my knife down the stems, trying to get them on that angle and really thin. So they look really beautiful. Swiss chard has so many different colors, especially in the stems, so it's a really great way to showcase the colors. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the stems. And it's the same thing, I do the same thing for pretty much all the greens that I cook with. So like those beet greens, like I was saying, or kale, or collards. I think, if the vegetable or the plant took its time to make the stem, you might as well eat it too. There's just a different way to cook it than the leaves. So now that we've got the stems done, I'm going to save half of it for the salad that we're going to do, and the other half I'm going to actually start sauteing, which I have a preheated pan. It's nonstick, and I also have some red onions in it with some olive oil, and I'm just going to stick it in there while I'm cutting the leaves, so you don't have to stare at me for half an hour. So the next thing we're going to do is cut the leaves. So as you can see from ripping the stem a little bit, they're already kind of falling apart, and honestly Swiss chard is really tender, so you could rip it apart with your fingers, but I've got a knife, so I'm going to use it today. So normally what I do is I stack all of my greens up. If you're not comfortable cutting through all of this produce, you can always do smaller stacks as well. Not a big deal. So what I'm going to do is just cut vertically through it so we don't have those massive leaves. Then I turn it to the side, and all I'm doing is making relatively large pieces. If you'd like it thinner, just cut it thinner. So mine are about this size, so it's going to be great for that salad, as well as once it's sauteed, it's going to, lose a lot of volume because of the water content. So here we've got a bowl, nothing in it. I'm not doing a magic trick, I'm just saying that there's nothing in the bowl. And I'm actually going to put about half the leaves in here, and while my stems are sauteing, they're not quite there yet, so I'm just going to leave those on the stove without the leaves. So I've got the leaves for the salad, as well as the stems for the salad. I also have some beets from the farm that are just roasted, 350 for about 40 minutes. I wrap them in foil with some olive oil and salt and pepper. You can also add other spices like cumin, but I just really wanted them to be tender, and we've got some beautiful baby beets right now, so it's a great time to use them. And I'm just going to cut them into quarters so that we can still see the integrity of the beet. And I actually keep the skin on the beets. They've got a lot of great fiber in them, and I also really like the texture. You just want to make sure that when you prepare your beets, prior to cooking them, scrub them really well. So I've cut them. I'm just going to stick them in the pot, or in the bowl, with the Swiss chard. I'm going to take a little bit of white wine vinegar, but honestly you can take any type of vinegar, or even some lemon juice or lime juice. Just a little bit. Some salt. I like cracked black pepper, but I like it really fresh. That's why I always keep a mill around. And then just some olive oil. You just want enough dressing on it to give it a nice little sheen. And we're just tossing it together. And we're going to plate that in a little bit. It would also be great with some goat cheese, but I just wanted to show a simple salad here. So right now, I've got the Swiss chard stems sauteed. They're really tender right now, so it's a perfect time to put in the leaves. And just like spinach or kale, when you saute it, it's going to lose a lot of volume. So I'm just going to put a little bit of salt, turn up the heat, and just once they get that bright green color, that's when I'm going to turn them off. As you can see, all I did was put the Swiss chard leaves on until they're that bright green color and they've lost a little bit of volume. But you don't want them to turn into basically a tablespoon of greens. You still want their integrity to be there. So at this point, I'm just putting it on a small dish so you can see it. And this way, the stems are really tender, the leaves still have some integrity, and it's a beautiful dish to have, honestly, with eggs in the morning, or it's a great side for either lunch or dinner. And then for the salad, all I'm going to do is plate it so you can see it and it's not just in a bowl. And what I normally do for salads is I try to put a little bit in my tongs, or if I'm using my hands, I cup it like that, and then once I plate it, I put as much volume on the bottom so it gains more height and it's a little bit more structurally sound. So if you needed that trick from restaurants of how we get plates that look really filled very high, that's what we do. And like I said, this salad would be great either with some goat cheese, or you could even do some sliced grapefruit or something like that. But that is it. Enjoy.